I don't know if you've heard this story, but it was 2010, I think, and Hawthorn started shit out. So he was probably under a little bit of pressure from Jeff Kennett as well. And we won, I think, 10 in a row. I think it was about 10 in a row. We're charging towards finals. And Clarko hated Port Adelaide from day dot. He was recruited from Port Adelaide, and he was let go the week of the day of the grand final as the midfield coach because he'd taken up a role as coach at Hawthorn. So he just hated losing to him. And Port Adelaide used to absolutely smack us early days, like absolutely destroy us. Anyway, we headed over to Port Adelaide, and it was when they were playing in that dump, Amy Park. Yeah. You know, they used to have the tarps out.
Yeah.
And there'd be 3 people in the stands.
Yep.
Anyway, and we were mucking around before the game. We thought we were pretty good. We thought we were red hot at that time, which Hawthorn had the ability of doing a few times, was just thinking how good we were travelling. But we got absolutely smacked, like never in it. When I say smacked, like we're just never in it. Lost by 5 goals or something. We get back, and I still get the shivers on a Monday at 4 o'clock. I've finished playing football 6 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it is. Monday, 4 o'clock was team meeting time, and you just knew, regardless of win or loss, you could possibly be under the bus. Anyway, Clarko got up the front, and he just stood there for a minute, and we were all thinking, what's going on here? And am I allowed to swear?
Yes, it's allowed here.
Yeah. So he's sitting there, and you can hear him starting to froth. Like you can hear it just frothing, and you're thinking, wow, this could be anything. And he starts pointing to his chest, like hitting it hard. And he's going, this dickhead here, and starts pointing to himself, this dickhead here. I fucking knew it, and I did nothing about it. I knew you guys were ahead of yourself. This dickhead here. And then clocked himself, punched himself in the face as hard as you could possibly punch yourself in the face. It made that, the real thud of, so he's wobbled himself. He's clocked himself anyway. And he's saying, line up and give me one. And as I say, I'm sitting near Cyril, but I'm also near the entry point to lining up. Well, you should have seen me. I was under a chair. I was absolutely hiding. He just was enraged by what had happened in Port Adelaide. So the next day, and he was brilliant once the meeting finished, it was done. But Michael Osborne, who was the joker and one of those guys that he probably went too early on a few things. You know, when you think, just let it sit. No need to. Anyway, so we've ducked out, and Osborne's gone and got all the boxing head protection and shit, and put it all over Clarko's lectern, everything for him next time he wants to punch himself in the face. But I swear, he hit him that hard. It didn't wobble him, but it would have hurt. It would have hurt that, but to get to the stage where you're that filthy at yourself, you've punched yourself in the face.
And has he wanted every other bloke to line up and chin him? Is that sort of where?
So because this dickhead here, as he's hitting himself in the chest, you look back now and go, right. And Campbell Brown tells that story at a Sportsman Night and winds it up. And you think too, there's probably a bit of sugar added to it at some stage, but the moment of fear when he started, pointing at himself. Well, firstly, I thought was better him pointing at himself than it is pointing at me. Yeah. But when he punched himself, that was the moment I thought, no, he's not in control. When you always assume the coach is the leader and the head of the tree. That he's in. He was absolutely out of control. He took us at the end of our best and fairest night, the replay, drawn grand final replay. Back in the day, they had 24 hours. It's in the contracts, 24 hours during your holidays that clubs could have access to you, just one day, but it clearly states 24 hours. So Clarko used that 24 hours. So we started at 5 a.m. Then we all had to go to the drawn grand final. We had to buy tickets and go to the drawn grand final. Then we had our best and fairest that night, but we had to meet at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. at St Kilda Pier to do a punishment session. And you do the math. I mean, you've been to many best and fairest. What condition would you be in at about 3 a.m.?
Yeah, you're never well. You probably haven't slept.
No, you're not well. No, you hadn't slept. No, so we've all rolled from the after party down to St Kilda Beach. And it was September, end of September. The water was so cold, but Hodgie had just been appointed captain from Sam Mitchell, so it was just the transfer over, and the night had just happened where Hodgie's presented on stage. So Hodgie had to take the punishment session. And we didn't know that Clarko was hiding in a car watching how we were conducting ourselves. I went home and got the boys because I used to steal all the towels from the footy club, the Cabrini towels. Yeah. So I went home and got like a bag of towels for everyone. And I was hanging out the taxi down St Kilda Parade or whatever it's called, just throwing towels. Like there was 50 towels thrown all over roads to try and stay warm post. So that was a bit, I mucked up. But blokes were fighting. Simon Taylor, I remember, it was really shallow for a long period of time. And he kept yelling out something like he was Jesus and walking on water and was like running through water. Hodgie was covered in blood. Sam Mitchell had fallen asleep on a park bench. It was the biggest shit show you've ever seen. Anyway, Clarko got out. And what was meant to be just a quick, dive in, dive out, and when you're done, ended up being a swim session. So we had to swim out.
That's cold, man.
And I just had hip surgery. And I was with Ross Smith, who was a coach and used to play, and he wasn't a strong swimmer, and he was holding onto the pier. I thought we were going to lose him that night. A barnacle-riddled pier, and he was like, if I let go, I'm in all sorts. So the barnacles are all over him. Anyway, we got in, and Clarko made us keep doing that until we could do it as a team properly, like until it wasn't a big shit show. But blokes had booked footy trips the next morning. It was an absolute disaster. But that was the only other time I reckon I saw Clarko out of control, was having 50 blokes leaving a best and fairest blind. Like you literally needed a walking stick to get home, and
straight to the beach.
Sending us. We're out 300 or 400 meters, like floating. And actually, there was a couple on the end of the pier that were trying to get going a little bit. I think they were trying to root on the end of the pier, and 50 blokes have rolled up. Anyway, so we've ruined it for him and her. They were trying to get romantic from one of the bars, and so that he lost the plot that night, and he lost the plot the day he punched himself in the face.
Man, they're two of the best stories I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, mate, it's a 24-hour punishment session. I couldn't, literally when he said, so we went in and then we didn't, that's right, we went in and someone was late. So we did the massive swim. And who was it? I can't remember. We were in all sorts. And it went from being inebriated and to having fun to we were trying to survive.
Yeah.
It was bad. And whoever turned up late, I remember Chance Bateman, he had a towel, and Changa grabbed the towel and looked up and said, "Thanks, mate." And the guy, I can't remember, it might have been Jordan Lyle or something, goes, "Nah, Chang, not good." And Chang's like, "You didn't just turn up, did you?" Anyway, sure enough, Clarko saw the late arrival. So then we're all sent out again. And big Simon Taylor, ruckman, I still remember it. All you could see was he escaped to his car, and you could just see his seat recline, so no one saw him. But that was incredible. That night, I'm surprised we didn't lose a footballer.
Mate, if the Kerford Road Pier at St Kilda could talk, a few stories and punishments down there. Mick Moldhouse.
Did you ever get chucked off there?
Oh, mate, we had a period there. I might have told this story before, but when I was at Carlton, you might not know, we didn't really win a game. And I think this is no joke. I can't remember what year it was, but we just lost to Hawthorn by a record number. It was 157 points or something at Etihad Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I'd had about 3 inside 45 kicks into the corridor that got turned over. And
dangerous kick, that one too.
You got to take it. You just got to, especially when you're 150 down. There's not much to lose. You just got to keep going. And one thing I had was I just backed myself in, even when I just didn't have the capability at all. You've just got to go for it. And I agree. The next day, mate, this went on for nearly because there was a period there where we lost Mick's game, his 500th game, by 80 points. It was Collingwood versus Carlton at the MCG, and it was Mick's 500th record-breaking game. We lost that by about 80 points. And then even after Mick got sacked, we kept doing it. So literally every morning we're at the Kerford Road Pier, and it was scary. Like you said, mate, it's scary because you can't swim. I'm not a good swimmer. And 2, because it's so cold and dark, you actually don't even know what's out there.
No, you don't. You freeze up. I mean, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it in Perth. I mean, that's one bonus is you're probably not going to get the great white sharks. But mate, the Kerford Pier, and I think the stories too behind. You hear that we see that people are coming from disciplinary sessions down at Kerford Pier, but you never know the story. I always think, geez, I'd love to know what you did on that Saturday night to end up off the pier. Yeah, what did you do?
Yeah, ours was just being shit. Mate.
Well, it worked. You just was shit now. It's been 15 years of just being shit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worked. What's the first memories of getting down at the Hawks? Obviously, that time as well, that was after the Super Draft. Then they've got another Super Draft coming in with big Xavier Ellis coming down in the doors. What's your early memories of coming in? Because at that stage, that's probably, was Buddy and that already there, and they're starting to really fly up.
Yeah, so my first year playing was, you probably remember the season when Buddy kicked that goal near the siren against Adelaide from about 50 out.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That was my first season, and it probably sums up how cocky and probably a little bit arrogant we were as kids. We thought we were going to win the premiership that year from 7th or 8th, wherever we were. Like, we'll win the flag this year, no dramas. But firstly, getting there, Clarko had sort of taken over. He'd been there for a couple of years, so they were heading in the right direction. And I really just jumped in and hung on for dear life because I knew that personally, I know you say the super draft, but you think about the players that were drafted around me. So Mark Murphy, good player. Dale Thomas was a good player. Josh Kennedy, West Coast, is a pretty good player. Scott Pendlebury is a pretty good player. So that was the first 5 picks, and then my fat ass is in the middle of it all, which it doesn't make sense. So I apologise to Hawthorn supporters about that. But
mate, they got the flags at the camp.
Yeah. But I'd never met an AFL player, really. So Ruffy was a Gippsland boy who I played a little bit TAC Cup with. But apart from that, I didn't know AFL players or anything. So heading there, I remember still getting a text from Sam Mitchell on draft night inviting me to go get a beer. And I was having a party at my place in Melbourne. And I almost called stumps at my own party to go have a beer with a footballer because I was like, he's got my phone number. This is unbelievable. I honestly was about to go have a beer with Sam Mitchell and just tell everyone to go home. So I was just in awe. And like Buddy had something else about him. It just, as he got bigger, and I call it skinny Bud. I mean, when he was just skinny, good looking, kicking goals. You'd go somewhere and I was like a sheep's dag, I suppose. You know, occasionally you'd get the invite to come have a beer, but the joint would just stop. The joint would stop. The attention that he got was something I've never seen before. Was just everyone was interested in Buddy Franklin.
Yeah, and you can see why now. Like he had to get out of Melbourne because the amount of years, and like I've even seen him. Like I was living when I was up in Sydney for 2 years, and even like myself. And not that I've ever been on his level whatsoever, but I think I touched him once in a game. It was awesome. And then another time I actually saw him driving around in Sydney, and I was a little bit like, holy fuck, that was Buddy Franklin. Like I was actually like starstruck.
Mate, I still get that. I don't know if you can probably picture it. You know when Buddy kicks those amazing goals and then he runs around and does those giant high fives, like the big double jump.
Yeah.
I honestly used to try and like queue up so that at least if the replay lasted for years, like
you've got one photo with him.
I'll be dead and buried, and they'll be showing replays, and number 8 will just flash you with a double high five just to try and get in a picture. But I've got a photo too from when we won the flag. A Buddy was like 2 people over from me in the song, but it still counts that Bud's sort of half got his arm.
Yeah,
on me.
he's touching
like,
touching your shoulder. Yeah,
yeah. So, mate, he had this different aura around him, and you're right. You sit there, and go, oh Christ. Not only am I like you play footy with these guys, like they know your name. I couldn't get around the fact that these people know your name and like refer to you as someone they are somewhat friendly with. So, he was just a different beast.
No,
it was. I can't overstate how went to this beach hotel one night and the attention from the females was it was incredible. He just had everything.
Hey, there's a story here that really resonates with me because I feel like I've been in this position many a times and it's being emergency. Okay, so I was probably emergency more times than I actually played games. So I got pretty good at it. And there was always that sort of thing in the back of your mind going, look, this is never going to actually happen. I'm never actually going to get called up to a game. I'll just sit here and chill out. Your case, though, I've heard that wasn't the case one day. You've been called up in a game. I think was it a derby even? Or was it just
Adelaide Crows?
Adelaide Crows. So do you want me to tell you what I've heard first?
Yeah, give me your version of events.
Okay, I heard that you were hogging back a 4 and 20 pie and a can of Coke. You've been quickly rushed down to the rooms, got changed, and straight into the game. A player that will remain nameless, and we might have just been speaking about him earlier, your good friend of the show, Luke Shuey, has sworn that he's seen you at throughout the first quarter setting up the Weagles web in the kick-in zone, and you've got tomato sauce on your top lip.
Look, there's the versions of that are quite accurate because not only was I not a chance of playing, I had sort of cracked bone in my wrist. So, I was in preparation. I remember Shuey said to me on the field, "What are you doing out here?" I said, I actually don't know. And he goes, have you had any water? I said, not a drop of water today. I'm the most dehydrated human on the earth, and I've got a belly full of pie. But it's happened to me twice still, the late call-up. Another one was a Friday night Hawthorn v West Coast, and I was only made travelling emergency because I was due to play 60 minutes of VFL football the next day.
Says with the red eye.
Two other emergent. No,
or
it was in Melbourne.
Okay.
In Melbourne. And the two other emergencies were at Box Hill, but they were kids. So they wanted them to go to the meetings the night before the game to get their head around it. I was obviously a bit older. So they told me to come, but I had a uni exam that day and I had an NBA playoffs were on and I ate, I reckon, 35 dumplings. So we watched the NBA, had dumplings. Then I went and what did I do? I think I might have even done a swim or something ridiculous. Turned up and Paul Piopolo did his quad running through the banner. And so they said I wasn't right to play. And but there was no other emergencies there. They were still at Box Hill. So I sat on the bench and Grant Birchall did his PCL in like the first 3 minutes of the game. And they made Birch stay out there. So poor old Birch, who's had knee troubles, held on to this PCL for like 3.5 quarters until they were like, righto, Birch, you can come off now.
So
yeah,
you were sub, were you? Sorry?
Yeah, I was sub. Yeah, so I was sub. So I just sat there waiting. And sure enough, that's right. And even when I was the late in for West Coast, the meat pie story, there was a sub. I think there was still a sub, but for some reason I wasn't the sub. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's always a reason why there's that.
Yeah. So I had to stand on Eddie Betts that night too. So it went well for me. That was the last game of footy I ever played. No, not a highlight of my life. And so I went down my very last game of football against Adelaide, got my ass handed to me by Eddie Betts and retired.
And had some tomato sauce on the lip.
Yeah, it had the tomato sauce dripping on the lip. But that's a little bit unfair because I usually was eating meat pies at the game, but it was always very clever to hide so you'd go to the toilet and you'd scoff the meat pie in the toilet or something so that the young boys didn't see what you're eating.
Oh, shit. And another couple of good ones about the time at West Coast. We had Hayden Valentine on last week. Had Mickey Barlow on, who's a good friend of yours as well from the West. Yep. And the derbies are always big games. Derbies are always big games. What are your memories of some of the derbies playing for West Coast?
We got our pants pulled down once, and then we smashed them the second time. But Mick and I are good mates. I don't know if Mick's told you this, but I played on Mick one day. He was playing half forward, which I always thought, like Mick Barlow Prime was an exceptional midfielder. Like he was just really clever, crafty. But I mean, half forward, I thought he was just always played out of position, and it's hard to really. It's the graveyard shift regardless, and you really need a couple of tricks up your sleeve. And I remember I was playing on Mick, and sure enough, he wasn't having a great day, and at halftime we were up by 4 or 5 goals, I think, or maybe even more. Anyway, Ross Lyon has absolutely baked Mick and gone through him and threw the red vest at him at halftime. And getting subbed off at halftime, you got to be pretty bad to be subbed off at halftime.
I've been there.
Anyway, have you?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You've got to have a bad day.
Oh, mate, it was chewing off at 45 again, but I hit the roof at the Culture Dome.
And that was it?
That was it.
Yeah. So Mick's had the red jumper thrown at him at halftime and told him, you fucking pathetic, and went through him. Anyway, Roscoe settles down and, the red vest has sort of been taken off Mick and said, you've got one opportunity. You've got one chance. If I don't get a gauge on your change of attitude in the next, first 5 minutes of the quarter, you're coming off. Anyway, Mick looks at the board and he's starting on the bench. And sure enough, he get 5 minutes in, he's getting the shoulders rolling over, ready to go, give the thighs a bit of a slap to pump himself up, stands up to come back on the ground for the first time in the second half, and the interchange steward hands Mick the red vest and says, sorry, mate, no opportunity today. So Mick sat down, been subbed off at half time, and I rang him after the game thinking he must have, he had a bad run with injuries, obviously, Mick. I was really concerned that he'd been injured, like subbed off with a serious injury, because he's a tough bugger too. So you usually see the end of a game with something slight. Sure enough, didn't take my call, and just wrote subbed off.
Mate, honestly, like getting subbed off, let alone at halftime, is not a good feeling. Like, especially when you're not injured. Like,
100%.
I think I might have told the story before, but I'll fill you in. That day I got subbed off, I honestly sat there and the same thing happened. I didn't even get a spray. It was like, I'm so disappointed in you and your efforts that it's not even worth my time talking to you. Like, it was just like that. It was never even explained. That's how bad it was. And I remember sitting on the bench with the red vest and I just said, take it in, son. This is the last time you're ever going to see the inside of a stadium because you're a sack of shit. And you just sit there and the things that go through your head, it's just, you're just like, oh, well, it's been good. Look around, take it in, check out the crowd, maybe wave to a few people because you just know you're not going to get the send-off you want. And, it can hurt.
It's not the dream. It's not the dream you had as a kid either. Like, you dream of winning a Brownlow or an All-Australian
shouldered
or a
off
Ferris or something. Getting something, getting a round of applause or something. But I think I retired on Instagram. I didn't even get anything. But the one that you laugh at waving to the crowd goodbye, Mitch Brown, who twin
Nathan
Brown at Collingwood. So Mitch, unfortunately, had done an ACL earlier in his career. We were playing a derby. So this is a derby one. He's got the job on Hayden Ballantyne, who we just spoke about.
Yep.
And for some reason, Mitch, incredible athlete. He could play tall or small. He went down and was in so much pain and instantly ACL. So he's laying there and, in immense pain. They put him on the stretcher and getting the cart off. And he's waving goodbye to Subiaco. So Brownie thought, I'm 28. He's probably the third key defender. He's waving to everyone. And, thank you, thank you, thank you. It gets into the change rooms and he's crying. He's in the shower, bawling his eyes out. Jacob Brennan, a good mate of ours, in his club suit, walks into the shower. So he's getting soaked as well. And he's cradling Brownie, who's distraught that he's done his ACL. The world's ended. He's gone home. His house has been robbed as well that day. It's an absolute disaster for him. Anyway, he goes and gets his scan. His ACL's fine. He's missed 1 week with an ankle injury. He rolled his ankle. He's missed 1 week with an ankle. But then 12 months later, round one against the Bullies, Brownie slipped over and grabbed his knee. And in the back, I gave him shit for 12 months, non-stop. Still to today, I'll send him a video or a photo of him waving to the crowd. He refused to get on the stretcher the year later because he was like, nah,
you can't do it again.
So much shit for this. I'm going to cop so much shit for this. Anyway, he'd blown his ACL into 1,000 pieces the second time round. And they actually forcibly had to put him onto the stretcher because in his mind was like, I can't deal with 12 months more of being canned for getting on the stretcher. The poor bugger. He actually blown his knee the second time.
Did he wave?
No, the wave was done. That was an away crowd as well. The home crowd, and it was like the real Queen, the slow wave. Oh, you never want to do it. Anyway, he got the round of applause. Everyone was standing up, and Brownie had a career like ours. It wasn't tremendous by any stretch of the imagination, but for that moment, the sun was only shining on Mitch Brown.